Like normally, Danny, I think if Myles Garrett showed up to camp and said that, I think it would be, I think Browns fans would eat it up in a way because Browns fans are always looking for a reason to be optimistic.
Sure.
And so I think they'd eat it up where it's like, yeah, I love that Myles is saying this. Why can't this be our year? But I think coming from him, the context of everything that played out this offseason, I just wonder if people hear these comments in Cleveland and they just kind of roll their eyes and they're like, okay, Myles, sure.
So I look at it as the tale of two different statements with inside one statement, because the defensive player of the year stuff that he said, like, I think that's fine and true. And like, that should be his personal expectation. And I think as a fan base, we should expect Myles Garrett to be involved in those discussions, whether or not he wins the award again at the end of the season or not. Like, he is somebody that should find himself on that sort of ballot. He should be in that conversation. He is somebody that I think is the best defensive player in the game of football. So he should be in that conversation. As far as the Super Bowl stuff goes, I think that he's in a tough spot there. And I don't look at what he did this winter. Like, I don't necessarily care about that at this point because he's here and all indications seem to be like he is where his feet are, right? Like, he's in the present right now, and that's fine. While it is delusional to think that the Browns could be in the Super Bowl this year, that is not happening. There's not a path to that, considering their win total out in Vegas, as you mentioned, is set at 4.5 games, and I might take the under there. But what's Myles supposed to say? Oh, no, our goal is to win 6 games. Like, what are you supposed to say in that setting? Maybe it is, we want to exceed some of the outside expectations. Maybe you say that, but you're not going to say, internally, we want to win 6 games. That's not what you're ever going to say as somebody that is the best player on the team, the face of a franchise, the team captain, even if we can have a long discussion about his leadership role. But you're never going to say, we're just happy to be here, right? That's not how professional sports work. Every team, whether it's the Browns this year or the New York Jets, who are probably going to stink too. Like, I bet Justin Fields is doing whatever media availability he's doing right now and is going to say, our goal is to get to the Super Bowl this year. 32 teams in the NFL have the same goal. For most of them, it's not attainable. The Browns, it's not attainable this year. Maybe it will be in the future, but right now that's not an attainable goal. But it is still one that I do feel as if Myles Garrett has to say, even if everybody there, because I believe you were there when he said it.
Yes.
Everybody there knows, okay, this is not happening. Like, that's not a realistic goal. But what's he supposed to say?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you mentioned every team has the same goal. I know Mitch, when we were texting about the Myles comments yesterday, he threw out that, like, Omar Khan, Mark Andrews, Aaron Glenn, Patrick Surtain. Like, there's a long list of people. Basically, the first day of training camp is basically just like everybody's winning the Super Bowl day because everybody was ready to sit there and tell you, hey, our goal is the Super Bowl. We think we can get there. And you're right. And here's the thing, like, working in this space, you and I especially, like, we are in locker rooms with players on a pretty regular basis, whether it's the Browns, whether it's the Cavs, whatever. Like, we know, like, we get a better insight into, like, where these guys' heads are at with things. And you're right. You can understand where Myles is in an impossible situation where he's showing up to camp. He can't come in and just be like, yeah, as long as we get to 6 wins, because Vegas thinks we're only going to win 4.5, 5.5, we're good. It's not that I don't think he shouldn't say these things. I just wonder if, like, this felt like a moment for me where in previous years people would rally around this because it's Myles and he's one of the faces of the franchise and all this. And this year, I just wonder if it kind of rings more hollow because of everything that transpired. I think there's going to be, I think, constant reminders with Myles of, like, yeah, I didn't forget what you said about this team, not so long ago. And ultimately, the main thing fans are going to care about with him is, like, if you're out there on Sundays and you're getting sacks and you're in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year and you're, in the conversation for the sack title, we're good. Like, we can wrap our heads around, like, the paid gun thing, which everyone's a paid gun in sports anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I just think, like, comments like, I think Myles has kind of lost the leverage to say something like this and it actually, like, resonate with the fans in a meaningful way, I guess.
Well, I don't think it resonates with the fans in a meaningful way because I don't think our fans are dumb. I think our fans kind of see what this year is going to be about. The reason you could say this last year, and I understand what happened last year and the fact that they go 3-14 and how bad they were.
Yeah.
But the reason why Myles Garrett could say that last year, not be laughed out of the room saying it, I don't know whether or not he actually said it, but just stick with me here, is because they went to the playoffs the year before, right? And the reason he could say it the year before that was because, well, they were coming off of a disappointing season, but the bones were there for a playoff caliber team, right? And you would have expected Deshaun Watson not being suspended that year going to look like the Deshaun Watson the Browns thought they traded for. The reason they said that after going to the playoffs, because, oh, well, we just went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Of course, the next step is to have Super Bowl aspirations. Where this year, the Browns are coming off of a bad season, and they didn't do anything this offseason to make you feel as if they meaningfully improve. Like, they made this offseason a gigantic trade in trading out of number 2 and trading away essentially Travis Hunter to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a move that is not going to make them better whatsoever this year. That was a move that's going to make them better maybe in 2026, maybe in 2027. They didn't do things this offseason to try and make themselves winners this year. And I don't think that's been true of any of the other off seasons in the Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry era. This is the first time where they had an off season. It's like, okay, well, our eyes are not really on 2025. And that's why I think when you hear these words about, the Super Bowl paired with the win total being at 4.5, it just rings hollow. I don't think it has, for me, anything to do with how Myles Garrett operated this offseason. I think it has so much more to do with how the Browns as an organization operated this offseason.
216-474-92. Does Myles Garrett saying that the expectation is Super Bowl, does it mean anything to you? Does it ring a little more hollow because of the fact that not so many months ago, rather, he was sitting there saying that this team was no good anyway, and kind of leading you into understanding where this team was at going into this season? Or does it get you a little jazzed up? Because I know Browns fans at this time of year are looking for any reason to be optimistic. And I do think this also kind of plays into, I talked with Daryl earlier in the week, Danny, about this idea that, and I don't know, this could probably be disproven to a degree in terms of like how much people are engaged with our content and with the station and with the Browns right now. But like understanding where the team is at and what the expectations are people less interested in camp and the Browns right now than they were even a year ago? And I think there's reasons maybe why they are, and there's maybe reasons why they aren't. Some of that has to do with obviously the quarterback competition week. But I'm curious your thoughts, Danny, because as we talked about like Myles and him coming in with the Super Bowl expectation thing, I don't know. Like I've wondered if because you're right. I think fans aren't stupid. They know where this team is at. They understand why the Vegas number is what the Vegas number is. And I do feel like they are approaching the season with this just kind of like tempered expectations. Like, okay, we'll see what happens, right? Which is a little bit different because I think most years you can always find Browns fans who are willing to like talk themselves into something. I mean, I remember the 0-17 season. Browns fans talking themselves into this team being better than people thought they were going to be, and then they didn't win a single game. So it happens.
That was a tough one.
And I'm not saying those fans aren't out there doing that right now, but it just feels like there is kind of like this understanding of where this team is. And so I've kind of wondered if the quarterback competition is something that fans are excited about because, well, hey, there's all these different possibilities and Joe Flacco's back. Or if it's something that is almost, I don't know, like making for less excitement because they're like, well, if we have all 4 of these quarterbacks, we kind of know where we are, and I'm not really excited about any of them.
Well, I do think that there is a section of the fan base, and I'm not saying that this section is wrong because I don't even know that they are. But I think that there's a section of the fan base that is willing to talk themselves into the Browns being better than we think they're going to be.
Yeah.
But when you do see that, because I'm sure you see that if I see it, it's talking themselves into, well, they could win like 7 or 8 games. Like there's a path to them getting to around 500. But nobody's talking themselves into this is the Brown teams that could win 10, 11, 12 games, go on a run in the postseason. Like nobody is doing that. And I think rightfully so. Is there a world in which the over of the win total hits and they win 7, 8 games? I think so. I wouldn't predict that. I think I'm probably a little bit more pessimistic because of the quarterback situation than most about this team. But I do think you could talk yourself into, well, the Browns are going to get back to what Kevin Stefanski did best early in his tenure here with what they want to do offensively. And if they have a good running game, it can make life easier for whatever one of these 4 quarterbacks earns the starting job for however long they have it, because I do expect we're going to see multiple quarterbacks throughout the year. So I do understand all of that, but it's just when you hear the word Super Bowl with a team that is expected to win between 4 and 6 games, it's always going to ring a little hollow to me, no matter what happened with the star player this offseason. Like I can push beyond what Myles Garrett said and did this offseason. I don't care. And I do think part of it maybe was a financial play, and it obviously worked out for him. As now he's the second highest defensive player in football, highest paid defensive player in football. So I can look past that a little bit, but ultimately I just can't get on board with it because I think what the team did the rest of the offseason does not align with those words.
Yeah, listen, I think you're right in terms of like what the team did. And I think part of that was they were just strapped in general. Like they don't have the financial situation isn't great because of the Deshaun contract. There's a lot of things that they were sort of working through there. I think the only person I've heard say even mention the Browns in playoffs in the same sentence was Mike Florio, who was on earlier this week. Like he came up with some way that the Browns get to the playoffs where he was like, yeah, you know what? Who's to say they can't get to 10 wins and maybe be a sneaky playoff team? Like I'm not there. My biggest argument for exceeding those expectations has been, the stuff that you sort of laid out as well, Danny. Like you're going back to Stefanski's offense. If the offensive line, and I think it's a big if, can stay healthy, this group thrives in that system. We know that. Get back to running the football, the play action stuff that, Joe Flacco thrived in 2023 that helped you get to the playoffs the last time around. Those are all reasons why. And I've said from the beginning, like, I think this defense, I don't think the defense was as bad as people made it out to be last year. I think they were given like a short, they were put in a bad situation because of how bad the offense was.
Right.
And if you just get competent offense this year, I think 6-7 games, like you can win 3 more games than you did a year ago with a more competent offense than you had a year ago. Now, I know there's people who are saying, are we sure the offense is going to be more competent? I get that. That's fair. I think it will be because I just think the quarterback play we saw last year was some of the worst quarterback play we've ever seen in NFL history.
Right.
But no, do I think that means playoffs? Do I think that means Super Bowl? Of course not. I still think they're a ways away from all those things, and maybe that comes. Maybe those expectations can be back next year if they draft a franchise quarterback. And again, it's not that I think Myles Garrett wasn't supposed to say this. I just think it's fascinating, like where people sort of stand on this team, because this is a time of year that people are getting excited about football being back and excited about their Browns being back. But I also think hearing Myles say that, I think people probably rolled their eyes because they kind of know what lies ahead for this team, if you will. Like they know where this team is at. They're not stupid. The quarterback competition is what it is. And I haven't heard anybody really try to sell. I would say this, Danny, like if they do, I think exceeding expectations in 2025 is what you mentioned. Like get to 7 wins, get to maybe 8 wins. And I think all of a sudden people are like, okay, that's a pretty successful season. Not that Myles Garrett's going to come out and say, like, let's just win 8 games. And I'm not expecting him to. But to me, like, I feel like that ends up being a successful season for everybody involved. And we're not talking about then Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry and company getting fired. We're probably talking about, like, all right, so who's their franchise quarterback that they're taking next year? And is next year is next year finally like the make it or break it year for this team?
I think that a successful season for the Browns would be to feel good about this team going into the offseason. I think that is the way that I would define success for them. It's not a Super Bowl. I don't even think it's a win total because I think you could feel like if they win 6 or 7 games, I don't think I'm going to feel differently, right? Like that one win is not going to make me feel better about this team going into the offseason or worse about this team going into the offseason. I do think the goal for this year is for us to feel good about the direction that this organization is headed going into next offseason, given that they have ammunition in the draft where they can potentially move up to where they can potentially possibly finally find a franchise quarterback, and then we can really move forward with things. But that, I think, should be what the goal is this offseason or this season for this organization. Like, don't put it on win total. I want to feel better about this team at the end of the year than I do right now. And if that's the case, I'll feel good about that.
What I think is interesting about that that stance specifically is like, well, first of all, I think like everyone's going to have like a different definition of like how they feel good about the team to a degree. But I actually think that's kind of the right answer, where it's not just, it's not a number. It's not like, hey, they got to win this many games. It kind of is just like, okay, are they trending in the right direction? And that so much rests on that specifically. Kevin Stefanski's future rests on that specifically, because I've talked about it. Like if there's a chance we get to the offseason and we're talking about Andrew Berry differently than we were a year ago, and we're talking about Kevin Stefanski differently than we were a year ago, where I think Kevin Stefanski largely got kind of a pass for a lot of what went wrong last year. But like if Andrew Berry's draft class hits, if three out of the three of these guys, four of these guys like end up being consistent contributors and they look like they're giving you something, if Mason Graham's a star, if Carson Schwarzenegger's flying around, it looks like the JOK 2.0, if you will. Like I think people sort of leave and they're like, okay, Andrew finally got some. Even if guys like DeJuan Jones hold their own at left tackle, if Cedric Tillman takes that step that the Browns think he's going to take, I think the conversation around Andrew Berry starts to become like, okay, so he now has some players in here who can do some things. Why did the team only win 4 games, for example? And so then it kind of changes. But that's where I think, and I don't think anybody's like directly on the hot seat just based on what Jimmy Haslam's talked about this offseason. But I do think, like, as you talk about expectations for this team, real expectations for this team, I do think it is what you sort of allude to of get to the offseason and feel like there's tangibly something positive.
You just want to feel good. You want to feel good going in the offseason. I think that would make this year a success. I really do.
Let me ask you this, because Mitch brought up to us too, like John Harbaugh was the one person who didn't say Super Bowl or bust, and he kind of pushed back on the Super Bowl or bust narrative. And we've seen other athletes over the course of time like push back on like the championship ring culture thing, you know, especially in the NBA. Damian Lillard was famous for that, obviously, when he was first in Portland. If Myles had shown up and not said Super Bowl or bust, like, would you have been mad at him for that? Like, would you?
No, because I don't want those guys to, like, I don't want Myles Garrett to go into this season with a losing mentality. Yeah. And I don't think anybody should want that. But if he also said, you know, we want to prove.
What if he said what you just said? What if he was like, our goal is to feel like we're headed in the right direction, feel positive about the direction of the team after the season?
So I think that might be a little different, but I do think there's a way that he could have answered it where he just not gone Super Bowl or bust. And I think he could have said, we want to prove people wrong, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think that he needed to, or I don't think anyone with the Browns need to put a concrete goal out there to the public. They don't have to do that. Now, the Super Bowl thing is a very concrete goal, and it's a goal that's not going to be accomplished this year. But I do think that they could have just said, we want to prove people wrong. We hear what people say about us. We know what the expectation externally is for the Cleveland Browns. We want to exceed those expectations, and we want to, this year, we want the Cleveland Browns to prove people wrong. I think that is the way to answer that question, because what are we going to say if he says that? Like, no issues, right? Where would he be wrong as far as that goes? Now, what proving people wrong looks like does leave it a little open-ended, right? You don't have a concrete thing that we are all looking at and say, okay, well, they didn't accomplish the goal. They didn't prove people wrong, or they did. Like, it's very much in a gray area, which kind of, if you're an athlete answering that kind of question, that's where you want to live, in the gray area.
Right.
But I do think for some organizations, like, no, it should be the whole Super Bowl or bust thing. Like, it should be the championship should be the goal. That's what your eyes should be on. And the Baltimore Ravens are certainly one of them, right? Like, look at what they have. And for John Harbaugh to say, you know, maybe the Super Bowl isn't the goal, like, that to me feels like a loser mentality, because you have a league MVP. You have the guy who was first team All-Pro at quarterback in Lamar Jackson. And you know what you've not done with him is have significant postseason success. Like, it's kind of, I think, for them, a little bit of now or never. And to say, well, you know, maybe that's not the be all end all. I just feel like, okay, that's kind of a loser mentality type thing.
Are the Ravens the Cleveland Cavaliers of the NFL?
No, because I think the Cavs, when the Cavs get back for media day, you know what Donovan Mitchell is going to sit up there and say? This year's about winning a title.
Yeah, you are
Evan
right about
Mobley's
that.
going to say that. Darius Garland's going to say that. And like all of those guys who they failed in the postseason, you know what they also said? We failed. We came up short. Like they wore that. And
John Harbaugh's just like, hey, life lessons.
Yes, like I
That's
can.
all that matters.
I mean, maybe Kenny Atkinson won't go as far as some of the players will go, but Donovan Mitchell is going to sit up there at Rocket Arena or Cleveland Clinic Courts, wherever they have media day in late September, early October when they have it. And he's going to say, our goal is to win a title this year. We want to get to the finals. We want to win the finals. We want to be champions 1 year from now. Maybe he's not going to say those exact words, but that's going to be the message. I can promise you that's what's going to happen. So I wouldn't compare them to that because I do think that they're going to sit here and say, we failed last year, which the Ravens also did. And the Ravens have failed a bunch of years in a row. We have championship expectations. We had them last year. We came up short. Our expectations to win a title this year.
It is surprising that with Lamar Jackson and all the failures of that organization in the postseason, John Harbaugh wouldn't take a bigger swing at the thing that
especially for a guy that has won a Super Bowl.
Right.
Like it's not like he hasn't been there. Now with this current version of the Baltimore Ravens, obviously he has not, but he has won a Super Bowl in the past. Like he knows what it takes. And him saying that makes me wonder if he knows they don't have enough around Lamar to do it. Like I wonder if that is where this is coming from.